The distress beacon appeared on my console like a dying heartbeat, faint, erratic, almost lost in the cosmic static. I was 3 months into a solo salvage run beyond mapped trade lanes, the kind of job you take when you've burned every bridge in civilized space. My ship, the Wayfarer's Luck, wasn't fast or pretty, but she could keep flying when everything else fell apart. That mattered out here. I almost ignored the signal. Out in deep space, distress calls were often traps, pirates, automated wrecks, or worse, things that pretended to be human. But the signal was old-fashioned, analog-coded, and weakening by the second. Whoever sent it wasn't trying to lure anyone. They were trying to survive. I altered course. The source was a shattered cruiser drifting near a dead star, its hull torn open like a ribcage. No registry, no known design. Alien but not hostile-looking. As I maneuvered closer, my sensors picked up a single life sign inside.
1.
Fading fast. I breached the hull and followed the trail of frozen atmosphere into what used to be a command chamber. That's where I saw her. She was slumped against a fractured console, dark crimson blood floating in slow, terrible spheres around her. Her skin shimmered with an opalescent hue, not quite blue, not quite silver, etched with faint bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly in time with her heartbeat. She looked humanoid enough to break your heart, and alien enough to remind you how small humanity really was. Her eyes opened when I approached. Gold, luminous, sharp even through pain. "Don't come closer," she said, her voice strained but perfectly translated through my suit's universal interpreter. "You're bleeding out," I replied. "If I don't help, you'll be dead in minutes." She studied me for a long moment, then gave a faint, bitter smile. "Then history will end because of your hesitation." I didn't understand what she meant, but I didn't hesitate again. I stabilized her wound with a medgel injector. Human tech, probably inadequate, but it slowed the bleeding. I carried her back to my ship, feeling how light she was, how fragile. Not someone who looked like a conqueror. Not someone who looked like they ruled anything at all. She lost consciousness before we even sealed the airlock. For 2 days, she hovered between life and death in my medbay. My ship struggled to adapt its systems to her biology, but somehow, she held on. When she finally woke, she was calmer, alert in a way that made my skin prickle. "Where am I?" she asked. "My ship." "You're safe," I said. "I'm a salvage pilot. Name's Rian." She inclined her head slightly. "I am Ashikale." That was all she said. No titles. No demands. Just a name. Over the next few days, I learned fragments of her story. Her ship had been attacked, ambushed by forces she refused to name. She spoke carefully, like every word had weight. She asked questions about humanity, about our politics, our wars, our reach into space. I assumed she was a diplomat or a courier, maybe someone important, but not that important. The truth revealed itself when the Empire came looking for her. It started with the scanners screaming. A fleet dropped out of slip space around my ship, dozens of vessels, sleek and impossibly advanced, forming a perfect encirclement. My weapons were useless. My engines might as well have been toys. Ashikale stood from the medbay bed, suddenly steady, regal. The faint glow along her skin brightened, forming intricate patterns that felt ancient and powerful. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. "They are not here to kill you." The main view screen lit up with an alien face, stern, armored, eyes blazing with reverence. The being lowered its head. "Empress Ashikale," it said. "Forgive our failure." The Empire kneels. My knees nearly gave out. Empress. Ruler of an empire that spanned star systems I'd never even heard of. I turned to her, stunned. You rule them? She met my gaze. I serve them, she corrected. And, because of you, I still can. The fleet's commander explained what she hadn't. Ashikail had been betrayed by her own High Council, attacked during a diplomatic mission because she refused to authorize a genocidal war. Her survival threatened those who thrived on conquest. If she had died, the Empire would have burned half the galaxy in her name. I had nearly let that happen. They offered me anything, credits, technology, land on 1,000 worlds. I refused. Not because I was noble, but because I was overwhelmed. Because I had saved her thinking she was just someone bleeding out in deep space. Before she left, Ashikail returned to my ship alone. No guards. No banners. You changed the fate of millions, she said. Not with power. With compassion. I just did what anyone should, I replied. She smiled sadly. That is why it mattered. She placed a small, glowing device in my hand. If you ever need sanctuary, speak my name into this. The Empire will answer. Then she was gone, swallowed by the light of her fleet, as they vanished back into the void. I returned to my salvage routes. Same ship. Same lonely stretches of space. But everything felt different. Every distress signal mattered more. Every choice carried weight. Because somewhere out there, an empire endured, not because of its fleets or weapons, but because a bleeding stranger in deep space had been given a chance to live. And because I had learned that even the smallest actions can echo across the stars. Years later, when the beacon finally activated, I was drifting near the edge of known space, watching a blue giant collapse in on itself. The device in my pocket, silent for so long I'd almost believed it symbolic, began to glow. Ashikail, I said quietly. The answer came instantly. Not a fleet this time. Just a single ship, elegant and familiar, sliding out of slip space like a promise kept. She greeted me in person, no longer wounded, no longer hunted. An Empress still, but also the same woman who had once bled in the dark between stars. Her empire had changed. The war had ended before it began. Entire civilizations lived on, unaware of how close they had come to extinction. I told them about you, she said as we watched the stars together. About a human who had no reason to care, and did anyway. I laughed softly. Guess that makes me part of history. She shook her head. No. It makes you proof. Proof that power doesn't always come from thrones or fleets. Sometimes it comes from answering a call no one else will. As her ship departed and the stars reclaimed their silence, I returned to my course, still a lone pilot, still answering distress signals. Because you never know who's bleeding out in the dark. And you never know which life might hold an empire.